Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back, everybody, to another chapter, the final chapter, the epilogue of Hazardous Technology and the Minds Who Make It. Excuse me, written by Ukulele Villain and read by yours truly, Freewada, with the exclamation point for the added emphasis. Now, I read this, I'm going to be reading this, and I had read the past two parts all together. So I felt I was getting hungry, had to get myself some crackers, and unfortunately, the only kind I had to grab were peanut butter crackers. So we'll see if this even makes the cut, the cut to YouTube. We'll see how it goes in the first few minutes if I'm even going to continue on this. But y'all, this is the last part of our epic journey for this awesome Arcane story. My first delving into a fan fiction like world, but like, I know that this is called fan fiction in the end, but this is just a story. This is just a novel. This is just a fantasy world now that like we built in. And I know this is based off of another show, so it is still, I guess that's why it's counted under that, but like I feel like if I saw the show, I wouldn't get this kind of feeling out of the writing. I would get the feeling out of the show's writing, and maybe that would be like a feeling of a different story, but this, like, I can just visualize it. I can see it, especially from playing the games before, or even if I'm wondering, even if you don't know the lore, like how this like pulls out to you. How do you see these people? What kind of like issues have you arose with the imperfectness of each of the characters? And even better yet, it reminds me of myself. I don't really like doing editing and cutting on these and stuff like that because it reminds me that I'm not perfect. To cut everything to make it perfect and show your best self. Just I can't do that. It's just not who I am. And just like that makes me feel like Powder, like Vi, like Victor. We all try to like kind of mask what we want the world to see in the end, but we're still who we are and we're imperfect and we're beautiful that way. Just like you guys are. Let's get back into it. Let's finish up our story with the epilogue. Victor's perspective. War found its way to their shores. It smelled the blood that Hextech weaponry churned in the water. Or maybe it was always meant to happen. While Piltover and Zon had swung and grappled with one another, another nation had taken aim towards them. It had waded beneath the waves, sat in the sea foam, and cascaded towards them with naval technology the likes the world had never seen. But they had used the hex gates too. Like Jace Tallis had invited them in, and they'd put their feet up on the cushions and then proceeded to unload a rifle into the ceiling of a metaphorical house. They had sensed crisis. They had taken that opportunity. Blue lights and levitating objects now polluted their world. And Victor was working with a series of cyber revolutionaries, all while missing Heimerdinger. As he helped the masked 16-year-old clear away wreckage glowing with Arcane, he considered that his mentor would be lucky to vanish after losing his seat on the council. The world Heimerdinger had left behind did not resemble the one he had built with Stanwick Padidley. It would have terrified him how the era of magic had taken hold of them. They still hadn't found him. "Are you going to eat that stuff now?" the 16-year-old asked. The voice, made deeper by the modifier on his mask, made them look like a wolf. This one surely had a name but preferred to be called Splatterdeck. The firelights made him feel ancient. The lack of fear in their hearts shone through their metallic animal masks, and they jumped and leapt from flying board to flying board. The Noxian soldiers shot at them like they were annoying birds or pesky bugs, but they would not be downed. Echo's numbers had increased, and Victor didn't think they would win, but they would survive and evolve into the new world. "I don't eat it, Splatterdeck." Victor noticed the way the child's shoulders shifted as he used the nickname. The firelights were still wary of him, and Sky. They had labeled the other as their enemy as adults. It was funny to Victor, since Echo was now nearly the same age Victor had been when he had first found Powder. "I absorb it into my arcane core." He was not going to let the teenager know that it was technically a type of consumption. Victor had felt alien enough in his life and the new era of his identity and form he had been fighting to be comfortable in. There was no need to continue the spurn of rumors. So he was no longer dying. Hooray! The levitating orbs of arcane waste were pulled into the dodecahedron upon his walking stick. I must look like a mage. It covered the shape and seemed to wrestle with the circulating object. The arcane core was the bigger and more powerful of the two. And like a bigger biological cell inhaling a smaller mass, it inhaled the pollutant and glowed a deeper blue. Echo had suggested adding more tools to measure the ingestion, and Victor was considering the validity of that idea. He felt his heavy limbs lighten. He was a Titan creature at this point. His arm, his leg, and parts of his torso had lost their fleshy mass. Let us leave this place. He was cut off by the realization that Splatterdeck was no longer listening to him, and was instead readying a canister at his waist to toss into a darkened alleyway. Wait, Splatterdeck! The Firelight foot soldiers' crystal bomb left the tips of their fingers, and at the same time the creature from the alleyway lunged. It came forward screeching, enough time to latch to the teen's face and begin to suffocate them. It was one of the smaller ones, all tangled and purplish ichor and sludge limbs, but it was winning against the Firelight grunt. The calculations he needed to ensure he could blast the creature with his staff and not harm Splatterdeck demanded time that he did not have. Victor was unfortunately not Echo. He still was only able to get able to get only its leg, grazing the Firelight briefly. There were two pairs of screeches then, and Victor could not separate the Firelights from the monsters. It was a supremely lucky shot that struck what would be a hind leg if the thing had an anatomy not based around the abstract or the horrifying. There was no rhyme to it, since it was neither spider, nor crab, nor octopus or bird. It was all of those things, and none. These nightmares were the spawn of a Noxian Grand General that they had only seen from a distance. I bet that's Swain, y'all. I bet that's Swain. He had no time or want to walk the streets of Zon, so he sent loudspeaker taunts that blared across the skies, his crows, and these nightmares of sludge and terror. Swain's also one of my favorite characters back from League. A silence came over the alleyway. Surely someone had heard them, and now they would have to flee. Splatterdeck, he said, and ran to their side. The teen was convulsing, alive, but barely. I'm here. I'm here. He lifted the boy into a bridle carry, clumsy while he balanced his staff in the other hand. He had traded his cane for a staff, but the new way of walking still grated at him alongside his new, more explosive abilities with his arcane core. Everything was new, and he was failing, and this person would die. I'll never make it in time to Echo. She's closer, but... Their last conversation had been 48 hours ago, and it had been, well, explosive. He had meant to give her the space she begged of him, even if he doubted that's what she really needed. Splatterdeck coughed behind their mask. Victor made his choice then. Singed had a laboratory in a cave of purple flowers. Victor had had the water wheel. She had the great propeller. They both had no true notion of what it had originally been. The size of the turbine and the blades would have taken immense labor and resources that Zahn surely hadn't possessed, even before Stanley Piddlewick and Heimerdinger crippled trade through the building of the Sun Gates. It was an eldritch, technologically strange beast, and in its corpse she had decorated the place with her workshop and trophies from the Noxian battlefields. Victor called out her name, and he walked the precarious pathway atop the propeller blade. If he was still using his crutch or cane, he'd have fallen into the abyss below. He called her name again. Still she was not there. Please, they are dying. Everyone is dying, Vicky. She stepped out from behind the central pillar that they had deduced was the turbine spinner. At the top of the laboratory, the roof was a hubcap of sorts that spanned 30 feet across. Except for you these days. And me. We seem to have found new, better, and different problems. She stopped wearing her hair in braids, and now fell in great lengths across her face and body down to the floor. No more glasses either. Balder! She held up her hand to stop him, making 3 tsk-like noises, and then said, Not in the presence of company. When she'd been small, there had always been strange little rituals she had abided by. Spin in a circle 3 times before going to school, or tap every prime-numbered beaker in the lab before beginning a test run of arcane crystals, responses to acidic materials. Now, she had made a new series of rules and restrictions that seemed to keep him, and even Echo, at strange lengths. This was the one she held the fastest, too. Victor looked down at the teen in his tiny arm, or in his arms. Jinx, they need help. They need help now. Powder's eyes had gone to the teen's face, where Victor had removed their mask. Splatterdeck had pink hair. Then take him to the boy savior. Powder spat back at him, but then rolled her eyes when she saw the flinch that Victor couldn't hide. Her face scrunched as she grappled with herself. She muttered a few things under her breath before shaking her head furiously. Fine, but I expect a huge apology from you. A fucking gargantuan apology, Victor. He almost called her Powder again as they moved the nearly unconscious Firelight to a bench. Immediately as they propped the teen up, Powder retrieved a bottle of clear liquid, tilted Splatterdeck's head back, and poured the viscous liquid in. You're inducing vomiting already? He asked. Powder momentarily ignored Victor to pull out what appeared to be smelling salts. Powder was casually violent with the Firelight's body. They're still conscious. We need to get the shit out of them before they fall under. Otherwise, it won't be safe to do this. She was like a coach in the ring, keeping the groaning Firelight awake with slaps to the face and waving the salts around. If they puke this shit up asleep, they'll die. But if they sleep with the stuff inside, they'll also die. Splatterdeck on cue sat forward with wide eyes. Powder, with her uncanny speed, dexterously kicked the bucket forward as a deluge of black, green, and brown puke went into the bucket. Powder sighed. You Firelights eat like you're all still 12 years old. Would it kill you to have one fucking vegetable? After Splatterdeck had vomited through the course of the poison, they looked at Powder and Victor with an eye that was reminiscent of times of old in Piltover. Victor and Powder were again suspicious figures, even when they were helping. I'm sorry. Victor and her had retired to her desk and couch. As he tried to apologize, she shook her head and pointed at a cleared spot atop her workshop area. He knew the drill, and removed his shirt for her to check up on his back brace, but also the new additions he had grown. Balder, I am sorry. I know, she said as she started to tinker with him. I can't believe you and Sky are running around with wannabe street trash. Her bedside manner was the opposite with him as it had been with Splatterdeck. She worked slowly on his back brace, avoiding touching the places where his torso had been replaced by metal as well. He looked less and less like a man as the days went by, but he found himself not minding. What was it to be a man? And why would it not be better to be something apart from that? Had he not been born apart from men his entire existence anyway? Victor was faced away from her as he said, Powder, he wants your help. I want your help. Yeah, sure he does. Tell him to get in line. You'll never believe who sent me a letter yesterday asking for my esteemed aid in their fight against Noxus. I have the boy savior and the golden boy of tomorrow knocking on my door, begging for my help. This juncture, someone should just put a ring on it and marry me. I'm such a hot commodity. It's been a year. They had all taken new roles. Jace had fundamentally changed the Council of Piltover's framework and established himself as emergency magistrate with control under extreme positions of crisis. He had even married a girl from the Geopara clan to further strengthen his legitimacy. The events between him, the Hextech thief and Victor's kidnapper, were reframed in the propaganda of early Noxus aggression and Undercity collaboration with the enemy. I think I've done my fair share. Powder was bitterly quiet again. If you had to label the players in the conflict, Jace as Emperor, Echo as Sun, Victor as Magician, Sky as Chariot, then Powder was the foreboding tower. Her laboratory and her skills were feared and revered. She was no chemist like Singed, but she could make deals and had tricks up her sleeve. Echo was her benevolent opposite these days. You went to him first, and if he couldn't save you, then you turned to darker means through Jinx. Victor, you're beautiful. You know that, right? He turned to see her as she said it. Would you at least consider coming to live with Sky and I? He had asked this already. He would keep asking. He misses you too. No, I don't think I will. Powder picked up his hand, ignoring how heavy it was now with the augmented metal and magical coils, and held it against her cheek. They stayed for the night, because Splatterdeck was in no condition to travel and make the journey through arcane wastes or war zones. It left time for Powder and Victor to avoid all the topics they wanted, and only discuss the ones they wanted to. It was almost just like old times. "How was your lobster?" Victor usually started their talks this way. He's fine. Hates the noisy neighbors. Keeps asking me to take him on a long walk. Have to keep explaining to him that the beach is covered in arcane pollutants and hostile architecture." This meant that Powder wanted him to ask another question. She was picky on what they discussed. "You and Sky finally?" "We're colleagues," and he was struggling to continue that small hint of normalcy. The feelings he had grown for Sky were of such a strange and complicated nature that he wished for a trio dynamic like they had had with Jace. Anytime there had been a moment to develop those feelings, it was quashed by Hextech or Piltover. While Echo was the third in their group, leading, working, and venting, he had none of the same demands of Jace. In fact, he instead pushed for Victor to interact with Sky in a new light. It was all very frustrating, and part of him felt supremely selfish for it. In the middle of war, you have these trivial thoughts. Powder blew air between her lips. "You almost died." "We almost died." He still dreamed. Even with the additions to his form and the mechanization of his person, he had to sleep, of the burns and how frail she had looked in Silco's arms. "Yeah, and now we keep living." Her laboratory was not well lit, but even in the darkness he could make out the violet color of her eyes. There was such a supreme and horrific irony there. Echo had tried purging the shimmer from their systems, but it was interwoven with their bodies in such a violent and intimate way that it was simply there to stay for time. "I'm beginning to think I've died at least 3 times. This was a crossroads for their conversation. Victor could either remain quiet or ask. He boldly, but quietly asked, "When?" This pleased her. She hated it if he or anyone asked. "What do you mean?" Powder stuck out her hand, touching her index finger and thumb together so that the middle ring and pinky fingers formed 3 pillars. "First, Jace's apartment." She put her pinky down. "Second, the explosion at the bridge." She put her ring down. "The day everything went wrong at the last drop." She was now making a rude gesture at him. "Very mature." Echo had retrieved Powder from their last drop. Oh, that was Victor saying it. "Very mature." Echo had retrieved Powder from the last drop at great risk to his person and health. It was a beautiful wasteland of arcane blues and floating rubble. The erasure of normalcy to the world order was the domain now of the last drop and the surrounding stores and pleasure houses. With Noxian monsters atop the legends brewed from painful memories, it was a real graveyard. "And how many times have I died?" "Only one." He ducked his head, shamed. "When I first created the Arcane." The echo of her slamming her first onto her workbench fled into the abyss below them. "No, that was not a death. This is not a death, Victor. This is an evolution. You first died when you let Piltover kill you." She was insistent about this fact, about him not being guilty for what had happened to her. Victor chose silence afterward. Victor took Splatterdeck back to the Firelight base. It has been home for the last year, but he cannot help that he and Sky are strange new additions to the entourage. Powder grunted as they went for the exit, pretending to not watch him leave. Splatterdeck tried to ride their board, but could barely stand and was forced to accept Victor's help. The teen is silent and entire tents walk back. It's not leisurely the way they move through Zon. There are soldiers, enforcers, Hextech droids who fire indiscriminately, Chem Barons, and monsters. Monsters were everywhere now. Sulka was a terror on the world, but even with him gone, there's no peace. When they arrived at the Firelight hideout, there's not a moment of peace for either of them. Splatterdeck's fellow Firelights want to hear of what happened. They sink their teeth into the plump fruit of gossip that is Victor taking them to Jinx, the strange woman who's neither their ally nor their enemy. He thinks he has it, a Vestalia girl, who Victor believed had a mask like a fish that she usually donned, delivered the news to him quietly. There's just a perfect opening for him to sneak away to Echo's laboratory in the base while Splatterdeck gets their moment of adoration and attention. The other woman is already with him, she said. Victor assumed She was referring to Sky. Echo's laboratory was on the opposite of Powder's. She worked in near darkness atop a great mechanical beast in a chasm, and Echo worked in a hidden valley of light and trees. There was a similar level of nostalgia present with the iron ingots and flying machines, but with a different hue of sadness from Powder's. Again, it was sometimes embarrassing how much he saw Echo and Powder having in common, how much of the Jace he had known behind the new aura that was like them as well. Memories of Jace came unbidden even when he was focused on the realm of the present. Sky and Echo were surrounding a medium-sized, fat, cylindrical tube. Inside and hovering was some of the collected arcane pollution Victor had been collecting, and that Echo had been recycling into a project that had been hypothetical for months. Before, when Victor entered any room, the clack of his cane announced his arrival. His staff and limbs worked similarly now. Echo looks up from his work. He is saddened, brown eyes too old for a softer face. Victor had worked with the very clever for years, but not the very wise. Echo's wisdom is off-putting in the same measure as it is his strongest trait. "You took Splatterdeck to Jinx?" Echo asked as Victor entered the room with heavy footfalls. A beautiful miracle is about to happen, and of course he finds time to let his mind occupy his frustrations with Powder. Early in the war, in the hazy and strange introductions and reunions that had been tense and too quick, Victor had seen them arguing atop the deck of the treehouse. Powder animated, Echo on the defense, and Victor hiding while eavesdropping. "She's gone this time." "Then what's stopping you from staying, Powder?" Victor shouldn't respond, should divert the attention to the schematics. "You know she doesn't mind if you call her Powder." "She wants Zahn to call her Jinx, so I'm doing as Zahn does." Echo delivered the last word and looked back to the canister. Victor knows this process by now and moves his staff over the device, placing half of what he's collected into Echo's machines and the other half into keeping himself running. Sky cleared her throat then. "The Zero Drive currently has enough power to be operational for one attempt. I still recommend we test it outside of the base." Victor said what surely Sky and Echo were thinking. "What will happen to you, Echo? What will happen if this is not enough?" Powder's perspective. She had laid hard lines in the sand. Only those who knew her before could call her Powder. Anyone afterwards, or really anyone she hated or saw as an asset, would call her Jinx. Echo had saved her, of course, but none of that had mattered because Vi had already saved her. No one ever saved Violet, though, or even Silco or Vander. No one came for them. They all died as they had lived, trying to make something of Zahn. Zahn was cursed. Piltover was cursed. They were all cursed, and Powder would be the hag who lived in her darkened shack and laboratory. They'd weave stories about her as a generator of hazardous and terrible technologies. She was the mind who could make it and deliver it to them for a price. She had Victor now. Jace was off in his ivory tower, and even Sky now lived in Zahn. "Stay with us, Powder," Echo had begged her. She had made the actual bona fide hero and new lord of the Undercity beg her to stay with him in his firelights. She had wanted to so terribly. She really had. "I'm a Jinx, Echo." It sounded silly, supremely childish in hindsight. Yet she had seen the lines of what he was made of. He was the inheritor of Zahn. Without Silco, Vander, or Violet, there was only Echo. And she could not watch him die. She refused to see Noxus or Piltover, or whatever new force of evil that wanted to play the fool's game of claiming and controlling Zahn, destroy Echo. But now that she had removed herself from the game, every fucker in this city wanted a piece of her. A sound from the entrance of her laboratory gave her pause. Powder needed no security in her laboratory. It was precarious enough to get to the chasm where it rested, but anyone foolish enough to enter would have to face her. Powder knew the intruder wasn't Victor or Echo, but instead two individuals clearly in over their heads. Stumbling behind a masked and veiled woman was Piltover's finest loser, Caitlin Kiraman. She seemed older, and a badge on her chest made it clear that she had climbed over dead bodies on the ladder to get to where she was. She was also clearly nervous. Even behind her stone gaze, Powder could see cracks of what had happened. "Are you Jinx?" the masked one walking in front of Caitlin asked. This one was more regal than Caitlin. And even with their cloaked disguise, Powder could tell they were built of something finer. That's me. Powder accentuated the E in me. A little performative madness mixed in with the actual madness never hurt. Are you Caitlin's new squeeze? Or have we met already? Or maybe both? She knew that her sister had only used Caitlin deep in her bones, and body she knew that truth, and coddled it close for comfort. Caitlin winced and turned to her companion. I told you. Powder could guess what Caitlin had already said. Dangerous, impertinent, undercity sumprat. The figure paused, and then after they had let the air hang heavy, they removed their mask. Underneath, the featureless metal they had worn was dark brown skin, elegant locks of hair with golden beads and olive-colored eyes. She raised an eyebrow at Powder. Oh, shit. Powder let her own mask, the one of wit and insanity, slip momentarily. You could have just sent a letter like Jace. I bet yours would have glitter on it. Counselor Medarda gave her the barest hint of a smile that could have meant that either she planned to delicately kiss Powder or strangle her slowly. This requires discretion, and mail is traditionally intercepted on the front lines. The letter Jace sent you was almost certainly passed on to other forces many times over. I also doubt that you would have responded to my letters. Powder hadn't worn her glasses in a year, but she almost caught herself reaching up to clean them. Her braids were also gone. She found herself too often chewing on them. Look, I'm not joining your little war. Thanks for the invitation, but I'm very happy here. I'm working on my memoir. It's going to be called Get Jinxed, One Girl's Journey Towards Selfishness. Caitlin was reacting to everything with stony silence, or stares toward the ground. Oh, come on, Kiraman, lighten up. Look at us. We're exactly what everyone knew we'd be. You'd be some cushy Piltover girl who inherited the role of sheriff without actually doing any hard work, and I'm a bum living in a giant laboratory in the Undercity. And that's how you're hiding the firelights, Counselor Medarda was speaking again. You isolate yourself, and have worked to generate the story of yourself as a lone wolf, unaffiliated, all in hopes that Piltover doesn't realize that it was you who killed a major swath of our enforcer leadership, and that your sister was the one who destabilized us with Hextech. Again, just as it was 1 year ago, you're protecting those close to you. Powder suddenly hated Counselor Medarda and wanted her to be more than anything. Whoa, turns out you've got a big brain too. Shame. So you two gonna try and arrest me? Torture information out of me? Caitlin's gonna fill a sock with coins? I hear comm books don't leave bruises. No, Jinx. Powder, I have a task for you, and Caitlin, that I believe will save both Piltover and Zon. Counselor Medarda looked towards Caitlin before continuing. 1 week ago, a woman was spotted on a ferry to still water hold. She had pink hair, muscular, almost 6 foot. It's not her. You saw her die, you saw her die, you saw her die. Maybe not, but her arms had a strange glow to them. And even stranger was that she was accompanied by a hulking beast like dog. Hound of the underground. That's what they called Vander. That sounds like fairy tale bullshit. Powder turned away from them with the unbearable knowledge that she didn't want to see them. Powder wanted them to be quiet, wanted them to leave, wanted them to stop existing. What right did Counselor Medarda have to destroy the narrative she had built to protect herself and her friends? It can't happen. We live in the era of magic and of man-made monstrosities that defy our expectations. You killed your sister and Silco, but you never recovered their bodies. Nor did you ever discover what happened to Arthur Sigourney, a man we believe has been going by the alias Singed. I shot the core, and that doctor, she tried to piece it all together, but the doctor had been too in the shadow of Silco and Violet. That's how he's still around. Powder pulled her hair. Victor had only one trait truly in common with that mad doctor who had cursed them to their strange anti-death. He could fade into the background. He had hid himself and struck when the time was right. Never played for the crown. So that bastard turned my sister into a zombie. You want me to kill her again? God, Pilties are so fucked up. Just get Jace to do it, or literally any of your guards or drones to do something. I can't lose the game if I don't play. Somehow this made Medarda falter. She bit her lip. I am No longer a counselor. Oh, fuck. Powder mentally kicked herself for feeling an iota of pity. Wait, no way. Did Jace? Magistrate Giaparatalis cannot know about this operation, nor can he understand the deal I will make with you for Zon's independence and the future of both nations. It was strange seeing even a hint of weakness from Counselor Medarda. There was no victory in it for Powder. It somehow made her feel worse. Like the time she caught Victor crying when she was a kid, or how she once saw Vander sigh and lean his weary back against the wall of the last drop. There was something like a shadow hanging over Counselor Medarda. Again, Powder felt insane for feeling bad for her. Maybe it's because she's like you. You got conned by the guy you were conning, huh? Powder asked. Jay slipped his leash, or is someone else pulling it? Do you accept, or do you not? Her tone had become more openly hostile. Even if she had no official power, Powder knew this woman could do other things to make her life hard. Or she could make the lives of Echo and Victor hard. If there was a world where this all went different, Powder was not in it. I wonder if I could have ever said no. Counselor Medarda had an escape plan in the form of a very elegant and quiet flying machine. It looked suspiciously like one of the balloons that Powder had loved as a kid. When Caitlin asked Powder where she could sleep in the laboratory, Powder pointed towards the abyss below them. Eventually, the other blue-haired woman just went for the couch. There was a frosty silence between the two of them that Powder was determined to outlast. She did. Caitlin, right when Powder turned out the brighter lamp, said, Powder, are you really going to ignore me? Caitlin groaned when Powder said nothing from the pile of blankets and pillows on the other side of the turbine that she had made for her bed. Powder, please, please talk to me. I know your sister would have wanted us to talk. This is the worst slumber party ever. Caitlin whispered in the darkness again. She loved you. Even if she made mistakes, she always did. And it's not your fault what happened. Powder had enough. She stood and stomped towards an exit to the roof. Climbing the stairs 2 at a time, she threw open the hatch and curled in on herself as her hair tangled and whipped around in the wind. She screamed into her hands again and again until her throat was raw as the lights from Piltover, even in war, were so painfully bright and beautiful from up top. Somewhere out there was a new war and a new villain. Nothing would ever compare to Vander and Silco, though. Violet and Powder, Jace and Victor, Echo and the world. Powder was only there for what felt like a second when a hum permeated the noise of night. It was as if thinking of him summoned him. I hate your stupid mask, Powder said. I know, and I hate all of your guns, Echo said as he removed the mask. Now he would hover in place on his board, and she would sit, and they'd wait and wait until... I'm going to test drive the Zero Drive tomorrow. He was now deftly sitting atop his board, just letting it hang and sway in the air with him. I don't know what will happen afterwards. I wanted to tell you, was all. Powder knew he wanted her to ask him about the amount of energy he had collected, what type of stabilization methods he had perfected, how long back he believed he could travel with the device. Instead, she asked, Are you scared? Yeah, I am. He was making a rare admission. Are you scared? Of what? Everything. Of traveling with that top-side sheriff girl. Powder pulled on her own hair. No one knows how to keep secrets around here. Of course someone had seen Caitlin, barely disguised idiot. He smiled a fraction. Should I even ask what's happening? Would you even tell me? Powder shook her head. She needed him away from her. Victor, too. They all needed to just stay away. You'd just barge in and try to save the day like you always do. Are you at least going to tell Victor? This was where Echo and her always fought. He's stable for now, but his life is held on by tethers, Powder. What happens when he's all metal and no man? Then he'll be all Victor, Echo. I can't tell you how many of your firelights have prosthetics. It's the same fucking thing. You know, all you ever do is meddle with people. You're a total meddler and a control freak, and your savior complex is going to get you killed. You know that, right? My savior complex? He laughed. Now it was a real argument. He opened his mouth to make another comeback, but an explosion miles away had them both whipping their heads towards Piltover. A few of the beautiful lights had gone dark. Echo then rubbed the back of his neck. Fine, she said. I'll tell him. Powder. He flew close to her, hovered inches from her face, as Echo opened his mouth to say something more. There was an instant where she could see the tiny lines that made up the corners of his lips. He repeated her name again, but never finished his sentence. He instead kissed her forehead, before he then flew atop his board, like the devil was chasing him. She still almost didn't tell Victor. Caitlin wanted to see the Firelight hideout, and her insistence was almost enough of an excuse for Powder to escape. But Echo meddled, and Echo got his way, and now Powder and Victor were sitting together in a fucking treehouse. Surely their entire conversation was about to be recontextualized and broadcasted to every Firelight wacko around. Do you believe it is her? Victor had listened diligently and silently the entire time. Yeah, I hate that I do, but I do. Nothing ever truly dies. Powder had forced her hair into braids and cropped her shirts and pants, but donned a cloak on it. My ghosts won't let me be. It's like they know I'm one of them, and they keep knocking at my door. Very poetic, Victor flexed his hands. Oh, shut up. You're such a hypocrite. Every day you're spouting poetics about the world. We're supposed to be cold and unfeeling scientists. You won't let me follow. He was now deadly serious. No, Victor. I just can't. I can't keep losing people and jinxing everything. I just can't. He put his hand over hers and said, You will return. You're also too faithful for a scientist, Vicky. This is the new us. This is my toast. You will return. And he embraced her. And that, my friends, was the end of hazardous technology and the minds who make it. Again, I don't know if you can hear my claps through that. Great job, Ukulele Villain, great job. And for the chapter end notes for this one that I saved, thank you, everyone. See you all for season 2. I haven't actually checked myself. I've been so hyper-focused into this. I haven't even checked to see if a season 2 has actually been made. So, time to check that out, I guess. And Noxus coming through, of course. My boy Swain, whom I enjoyed so much. And that was even before, because again, I played so long ago that before he had what the Swain he is now in League of Legends. I was the Swain before. I was the one that just had to sit there and kind of Harvey Birdman my way around and everything. So, if that is a whole second part with the Noxus battles and stuff like that going around, that will be insane. And I would be more than excited to read it, especially if y'all are excited to hear it. Make sure again to go drop some love. If you have this PDF or anything, you can also click a link at the bottom of it to go by the archive and comment and let the creator know. I'll try to remember to drop a link if a link's not already in all of my descriptions anyway to go there. And from that, just, make sure to stay beautiful, stay hydrated, and we'll see you in the next book.